just a quick little bit of propaganda on our company, WEC Energy Group. We were formed in actually just June last year when we purchased the Integris Energy Group, and we acquired 5 utilities with that company. And so WEC is the holding company, so if you want to buy stock in our company, this is not a recommendation, then you buy it basically at the WEC level. And you can see I've divided the company up into 3 areas: electric generation and distribution, natural gas distribution, and electric transmission. And each of the utilities, independent utilities that are wholly owned by WEC, you can see the assets that they have in each of those 3 areas. So We Energies, this is our logo. We Energies is assets in the electric generation and distribution business. Wisconsin Public Service out of Green Bay also has interests in electric generation and distribution, but also in natural gas distribution. In addition, we can see Minnesota Energy, Peoples Gas, which is the utility in Chicago, Michigan Gas Utilities, which is commonly and affectionately known as Magoo, and North Shore Gas, also in the Illinois, supply gas to our customers there. And we're now about the 8th largest investor-owned gas utility in the United States. Lastly, on the right, you can see electric transmission. We own a 60% stake in American Transmission Company, so pretty sizable interest there. So this is my last slide on the company. Just in terms of our geographical footprint, we're organized basically across the states you can see on the screen here. We have around 4.4 million customers, 70,000 miles of electric and 44,000 miles of natural gas lines, and as Greg mentioned, about just under 10,000 megawatts of generating capacity. This footprint and the assets employed here represent about $16 billion in rate base. So that's just to give you a feel for who we are. Okay. So as I mentioned, the agenda today, and I've just got about a dozen slides. Fuel flexibility, and that's a big part, I think, of how we're going to be successful with coal. We strongly believe that coal is an important part of our fuel mix. Diversity of supply and security of supply are critical, and fuel flexibility is a big part of that. I'm going to talk about our air quality control systems, both at Pleasant Prairie and at Oak Creek. And then REACT, which some of you may have heard of. This is a reactivated coke technology that we've employed at a smaller coal unit that we have in Wausau in Wisconsin, and then a little bit about the future. So Elm Road, this is the station that the folks who will be going on the tour will see this afternoon. This is a 2 by 634 megawatt plant. It was built in 2010 and 2011, or went into service in 2010 and 11. It was initially designed to burn 100% bituminous coal. Now, during the design phase, we saw some changes in pricing on the bituminous coal, and we recognized some challenges in relation to mercury capture with PRB, but those challenges started to get resolved as we saw and demonstrated mercury capture at our Pleasant Prairie project. So during the design phase, we made some modifications to this plant to allow us to burn a more diverse mix of fuels, including Powder River Basin fuel, in the future. Now, the design change, I think the most fundamental design change we made was the change to our air heaters. And I kind of liken this to the patient who's on the operating table. If we hadn't made that change in the design phase and we wanted to make it later, we wanted to put much bigger air heaters in, it would have been a huge operation. It would have been like taking the heart out of the patient. So fortunately, we were able to make that change early. We put much larger air heaters in to accommodate the higher moisture that we have in Powder River Basin fuels. That really set us in a good place to make much more kind of minutiae or finer changes in the future, which we've, for the most part, made now, to allow us to burn that big range of fuels. So our air permit gave us that flexibility. We took a go-slow approach. Our coal handling facilities enabled us to blend different mixes of fuel. So we have both bituminous coal and sub-bituminous coal at the site, PRB. And we can blend into the units any mix that we want. And so we took a 20% incremental step. So we went from 100% bituminous coal to 80% bituminous coal, bringing a 20% mix in. We recognized and evaluated the challenges we had with that, made modifications, went forward again another 20%, looked at the restrictions and the challenges we had, and then moved up another 20. And we gradually picked it up to 100%. And now I'm pleased to be able to say that we can go from one extreme to the other. We can make full load on 100% PRB with the equipment that we have. And so the rationale for this project really comes down to a couple of key things. Cost competitiveness is critical, right? Security of supply is critical. When the plant was first built, 100% bituminous coal from the Appalachian Mountains predominantly, very difficult for us to ensure supply 100% of the time, and we've seen this a number of times. Having options to go west or east was really valuable. Having lower emissions, obviously much lower in sulfur, but also some of the other emissions such as mercury was also improved through the fuel flexibility that we have. Mill pulverizer redundancy. So the units were built with 5 pulverizers each and can only make full load. We can make full load, with 1 spare. But when you're on 100% PRB, you need all 5 mills in to make full load. Well, if we have an overhaul, now we have the ability to blend. We can go back to a 40% bituminous coal, take a mill out, and still make full load. So depending on the value of energy and capacity, our market will tell us, well, we want all 5 mills in. Well, we can't do that because one's out in outage, but we can give you full load on 4 mills with a blend. Okay, we'll take that, even though that might have an energy cost impact. So that's the flexibility that I'm talking about here. Significant fuel savings. You can see there 25 to 50 million per year based on going from 100% bituminous to 100% PRB. Now that's not $50 million at that plant. That's $50 million across our fleet because now those units are working harder at the top. They're working much harder. Their capacity factors are higher, which means our overall fuel costs have gone down. Our customers benefit across our fossil fleet because this unit, this plant is working harder. At Pleasant Prairie, this is just near the Illinois border, south of here, we have 2 600 megawatt roughly units. SCRs and scrubbers were installed in the late 90s and early 2000s. First wet scrubber on a PRB unit in the US. Now We Energies doesn't really like to go first with things, but this one worked out really well for us. SOx down 95%, nitrous oxides down 85, mercury down 85 plus. And we have 100% saleable byproducts. So we're able to sell all of the fly ash, bottom ash, gypsum, 100%. We don't landfill. We landfill through the winter months, but then we mine out during the summer months during the construction season. At Oak Creek, now Oak Creek Power Plant is right next door to Elm Road. In fact, you can probably see here. The Elm Road Power Station is right here on the right-hand side. Here now, this is about 20 miles south of the city, so it's north of Pleasant Prairie, south of here. Oak Creek is 4 units. We have just around 1,100 megawatts at Oak Creek. 1960s vintage. What we wanted to do here, we looked at the options at the time to shutter the plant, replace with gas, or put in air quality control equipment. And at the time, we felt that the least cost and for our customers was to put in an air quality control facility. And we really married the same design and footprint that we had at Pleasant Prairie, which I talked about just a moment ago, and adopted it here at Oak Creek. And that allows us to save significantly on the construction costs. We did have a geographical challenge. As much as the benefits we get from the huge heat sink with Lake Michigan, the cooling system that we effectively have once-through cooling at both the facilities, this was a big challenge for us because we couldn't build in the lake, right? Ideally, we would have put the air quality control equipment, which you can see here, the SCRs, the scrubbers, right outside the front door here. But that meant building in Lake Michigan, and that wasn't going to happen for permitting and approval reasons. So we ducted the flue gas from the 4 boilers to the south. And in fact, we ended up installing the largest tail-end SCR in the US, and the largest gas-to-gas heat exchanger of its type in the world. Again, very significant environmental benefits, 95% reduction in SO2, 75% reduction in NOx and mercury down more than 70%. Now I'm going to talk about a really interesting project. Now this project was acquired as part of the Integris acquisition. So when we bought Integris in June 2015, we acquired Wisconsin Public Service, and Wisconsin Public Service, one of their sites is at Western, which is in Wausau in the center of the state. They have 3 units there in operation. Unit 1 has been shut down, but units 2, 3, and 4 are still in service. And I want to talk about Unit 3. Unit 3 is 322 megawatts. It doesn't have the size to support the wet scrubbers and the SCRs, the conventional air quality control equipment. We can't spread that fixed cost over that small of a unit. So what WPS looked at is a technology that was available in Japan called reactivated or regenerative activated coke technology, or REACT. And this is essentially, and I kind of liken this to your water filter, right? It's just basically a carbon filter that removes sulfur dioxide and heavy metals from the flue gas and recovers those through a regenerator. And I'm going to just share with you here. So here's how this works. The boiler is up here. So the power plant is up here. And the flue gas, first of all, flows through a conventional fabric filter and then enters what we call the adsorber. It's not absorber, it's an adsorber, where there is thousands of tons of activated coke pellets. And the activated coke pellets basically have an absorption surface that attracts the sulfur dioxide and the emissions from the flue gas. So this is a moving bed. So as the adsorber, the activated coke basically flows slowly through this facility, is picked up at the bottom with the emissions entrained in the activated coke, goes up and into a regenerator. And the regenerator is just a big heat exchanger, where in a furnace, we fire natural gas to create heat that at about 1,000 degrees, you've got the activated coke, remember, laden with the emissions, running down one side of the heat exchanger, and you've got hot flue gas from the furnace at about 1,000 degrees on the other side of the heat exchanger. So the activated coke then, that heat drives off those emissions, drives off the sulfur dioxide, and we generate this sulfur-rich gas that then goes through a series of a scrubbing process and is dried, mixed with water to create H2SO4 or sulfuric acid. So here now, we've taken with this system, we've created a saleable byproduct. We've taken the sulfur out of the coal, we've created sulfuric acid. And I'm pleased to say that this facility has been in service now for about a month and is proving to be extremely effective at removing emissions. We just sold our first 3 tankers of sulfuric acid last week. So this is really a very interesting technology that I think is unique because, one, it's cost effective for a unit of this size and provides us with a product that we would otherwise have landfilled. Okay, so supporting a cleaner energy future. And I think, I've talked about some of the things we've done with our coal fleet. We're also in the process and have retired older, less efficient coal units. We have, I think, more to do. We've added combined cycle natural gas units. We have 2 primary sites. We have added state-of-the-art coal-fired generation. I talked about the Elm Road generating station, and invested more than $1 billion in renewable energy, including the 2 states' largest wind farms. And then lastly, the air quality control equipment that I talked about $1.5 billion has been invested at the coal plants as well. So what does all that mean? Well, if you go back to 2000 and you look at our emissions, and I'm rebaselining everything in terms of percentage, you can see there the reduction in SO2, NOx, and mercury. Quite substantial, 80 to 90% reductions in all of those emissions. PM also, huge reductions, although I don't have that shown here. As far as CO2, during the same time period, we've been able to drop CO2 emissions in terms of rate by about 23%. And you can see, this is our fuel source makeup here. Coal, about 50%, nuclear, natural gas, and renewables. So for the future, we think retirements are going to continue to be part of our mix. We do think that co-firing is an opportunity for us as well, with natural gas prices where they're at. I think we're looking at and testing our coal units with a combination of coal and gas, because for every BTU of gas we introduce to the boiler, obviously there's a corresponding reduction in CO2. We've converted a number of stations from coal to gas as well. The Valley Power Station, which provides all of the steam heat for the downtown area, and for anybody who had an interruption, please do let me know about that, because I'll have to chat with the plant manager. Renewables, we're going to continue to invest in renewables. Combined cycle and the operation of combined cycle units. They are right now driving our baseload generation, and a big part of the CO2 reductions we've seen. The other technology that we're embracing is RICE, reciprocating internal combustion engines. We have just announced recently a project in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to replace a coal-fired facility we've had since the 60s, the Presque Isle Power Plant, which is in Marquette, with reciprocating engines. And these are natural gas-fired engines, 170 megawatts in 2 different sites, very flexible, very efficient, very low carbon generating units. Energy efficiency, of course, is going to be part of the mix, both on the supply side, both within our plants, and also on the demand side. And then lastly, trading.